Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of friends explore movies through trivia. I'm one of these friends, KJ, and with me is...
Tom.
And I'm Chris.
For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with 4 rapid-fire trivia questions, and possibly a few bonus questions. Audience, feel free to play along from home. The first question is worth 1 point, and each question after that is worth 1 more point. Then we'll follow it up with our famous movie rant, where anything goes. Tom, tell us about today's movie.
Walking up to theaters in 2015, we would have had to choose between The Land Before Time, Part 14, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, Hail Caesar, Zoolander 2, Deadpool, Zootopia, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, and today's movie, VVitch. Chris will be our questionnaire today. Chris, what is VVitch all about?
So a family in 1630s America has been banished from the relative safety of their New England town, and they're currently forced to live at the edge of a dark forest. Everything starts out peacefully and blissful as they enter the spring, but as time progresses through the seasons, things start to turn dark. The darkest being when their youngest child goes missing due to a possible kidnapping by a witch. Now, this leads the family into a continuing spiral of madness as the seasons go into the winter and possibly early spring. And then eventually, the family continues to be haunted by this witch.
It's time for question 1.
The father tells the young son that he traded the mother's silver cup away. What was it that he traded the silver cup for?
Locked in. I think I have this right, though it was one of the instances where the accent interrupted the cognition of what he was trying to communicate, but I think I deciphered it.
Locked in with a guess, but if my answer I thought was a part of like a trade chain that he did, but I'm gonna lock in.
All right, KJ, what do you think?
Pelts?
Tom?
I thought it was the animal traps.
I too believe it was the animal traps, so we're going to give Tom the point for that one because they secretly go into the woods to check the animal trap, which was empty at the time, and that's when he tells his son that it was the silver cup that he traded away in order to procure it. So Tom's up by 1 point.
And that would make sense because I'm pretty sure he said I traded the cup and we got this and we got this and that's how we got the pelts. But I thought that I guess the pelts came from trapping the animals, right? That might have been the chain I was talking about. So we traded it for the traps, used the traps to get the pelts. It's time for question 2.
I'm looking for 2 different answers so you can get partial credit if you wish. The teacher in me is telling me this. So there's a couple of interesting things about the title sequence. Number 1 is that the movie had a subtitle. So I'm looking for A, what was the subtitle of the film? And number 2, what is interesting about the actual title of the film as it's presented on the screen itself when you see it?
Locked in? I know the answer to one of these. One of these I'm head scratching.
Yeah, I know the answer to one, and I think I got a pretty good joke for the other.
I guess I'll rephrase the question a little bit. There was an interesting spelling of the title, which I guess is what I'm looking for.
The one we got.
Okay.
Locked in.
All right, KJ, what do you have?
He didn't use a W to spell VVitch. He did it with 2 V's. As for the subtitle, maybe the season of, comma.
What about you, Tom? What do you got?
I actually did not get the spelling one. I got the subtitle, which was A New England Folktale.
Ah, so it's a team, Tom.
All right. So we're going to give 1 point to Tom, 1 point to KJ because you are both correct. And I actually did a little research on this when they apparently didn't use W's when this movie would have been period accurate. So that's why they changed it to 2 V's to make it look like a W.
So
I didn't know
read that too, but does that mean the "wa" sound they wrote?
No,
right. So then, like, what are you talking about, director? That doesn't make any sense.
It's a kind of movable type thing. It's also like where F's and S's look the same.
Put a little dash in the F.
Yeah, because you're just you have limited amounts of keys, right? That you can ink. So
And audience, some inside information. We have a text thread that Nick's on too, actually. That's probably why he wins, because he's on all of our text threads. But Tom, in that, I had said you were VVitched. So that was another opportunity to see that.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. I've read so much of this stuff in my life that I don't see it anymore. But
it's time for question 3.
Right before Caleb, who is the youngest, not the youngest, he is the oldest of the male children. Right before Caleb succumbs to an illness, a mysterious illness that he catches in the woods, what can you see him coughing up at right before he has his death scene?
locked in.
Locked in with a guess. I remember kind of what it looked like, but I didn't know it was identifiable.
All right, KJ, what guess do you have for this unidentifiable object?
A bloody, bloody, bloody silver chalice.
Tom, what about you?
I thought it was an apple.
Ah, it was an apple. It was an
gets
apple.
the 3 points, so that way it was an apple, because if you remember, he had told his mother a lie that him and his father went to the woods to look for apples, or went to the plain to see if there were apples, and that was kind of another part of his lie here.
Was there any religious stuff there, Tom? Was that the forbidden fruit or something?
I mean the obviously the forbidden fruit stuff from Adam and Eve, but in terms of
like actually connecting the dots, right?
Connecting the dots, I'm not sure. I mean, there's elements of sin that they seem to be punished for, but there's also inconsistencies with that too. Like, I'm not entirely sure where the baby is punished, for example, if we think of the baby as being punished.
Yep.
Right, unless he's not baptized. But that might be it. But there you go.
And was Caleb baptized?
Yes,
I think he was.
Okay,
because he would be old enough. But
that's why he was so worried about his brother going missing, because he realized that he had been baptized, but the brother had not been.
It's time for question 4.
This question has 4 parts, so 1 point for each of the parts. Towards the end of the film, Tamison, who was our main character here, she's played by Anna Taylor-Joy. She actually talks to Black Phillip, which was the family's black goat. The Black Phillip offers Tamison 4 things in order for her to, after she signs the book, as it's said in the film. What are those 4 things that are offered to Tamison?
Locked in again, I guess. Throw them.
For those of you at home, Tom was counting on his fingers how many he had in his head.
Yeah.
Locked in, but I don't remember.
All right, KJ, which ones do you remember? What were the 4 things that Black Phillip promised Tamison as she was getting ready to sign the book?
The one that stood out was butter. And then on this one, this isn't one of my 4, but he also offered to help her sign, because she's like, I don't know how to sign. And he's like, don't worry, I'm a goat. All right, here we go. So butter, warmth, freedom, and the American way.
All right, Tom, which ones do you have?
Oh God, I can't top that. It was butter, or like butter in her mouth, something like, it was phrased in a weird way. It was pretty dresses. My favorite, live deliciously, and then to see the world.
All right, so KJ, you got 1. He does offer her the taste of butter, but yes, he also offers her pretty dresses. My favorite as well, and the reason I made this question was that if you would like to live deliciously, and then finally after the whole I can't sign the book, he offers her to see the world. So with a resounding win, Nick once again takes it down very, very marginally over Tom, who then follows up with KJ in 3rd.
Hey, Tom, you swept. Perfect
almost
score.
I didn't know the double V.
Oh, 1 point for that. Yeah, yep. Almost.
All right, so I have 1 bonus question if you guys are into it.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to have
I actually have 2 bonus questions, but I'm going to say it's really just 1. The one other question I have is that about halfway through the film, the mother has a breakdown, and she has a dream sequence. And in the dream sequence, Caleb, who had just recently died, as well as baby Samuel, is there. There's one other thing that we see in the background of the shot that also tells us that it's a dream, and I was just curious if you guys had seen it. It's a little bit ambiguous. That's why I didn't make it a.
I'm gonna lock in. I think this is sort of a guess.
What do you think, Tom?
Window?
It's not the window.
Oh.
It was actually it was part of the previous questions.
Well, there was the crow. Oh, it was the silver chalice there?
The silver chalice was sitting on the bedside table.
Oh.
As she gets out of bed, before she even sees the two children, the silver chalice is kind of sitting there next to you can see it kind of glistening in the fire in the background. I thought that was an interesting one. My other question is kind of like the lead into our conversation. If you
Let's
want to
go for it. Yeah, perfect.
So my second bonus question is this movie literal or is this movie figurative?
Whoa.
I think it is literal, and hence my kind of problem with it.
Yeah, because there's two interpretations of this movie, right? There's the witch is real, and the witch is stealing the kids and killing the kids and sucking their essence, and Black Phillip is a legitimately, some aspect or demon or maybe even Satan. And then there's also the figurative. And they make some plays at like why it could be all in their heads or kind of a psychosis going through the thing, and the whole witch part is just how they explain it to themselves as a family. And I was curious what your guys' take on that was. Do you think there literally was a witch, or do you think this was all in their head due to poisoning and due to just like grief?
And audience, if you want to find out, stay tuned after the break for our Is This a Movie Rant? Movie Rant coming up right after this break. Join another Talking Studios production, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games. Text-based adventure games were computer games from before computers had graphics. The game uses text to describe a scene, and the player types back how they want to interact with the game. I'll read the text from the computer, and my co-host will feed me commands. This season, we're playing through The Hobbit from 1982 on the ZX Spectrum. Here's a quick sample.
I thought a lot about our first command, and I think it should be no print, because we don't want to print things as we're going along.
I think by default, it's not going to print. And even if I did type print, where is it going to print to? 1982?
I would imagine if we go west, we're going to be south of the troll, right? Just south of the troll land.
Yeah, let's try it.
You go west. The troll's clearing. The visible...
Oh, we died.
Oh.
All right.
The troll saw us and killed us.
So I think we have to say the answer to the riddle then.
The answer is dark.
Say dark, I think.
Talk to what?
Gollum.
Say Gollum dark.
You talk to Gollum. Thorin says, hurry up.
And we died.
What?
And we died.
So we went northeast last time. So let's go southwest.
You go southwest. Visible exits are north, northwest. You see the valuable golden ring.
Oh.
We're ending it here. That's
Wait.
perfect. That's
right.
perfect.
Limited Lexicon, coming to your podcatcher and YouTube in late 2022 by Talking Studios.
So what do you guys think? Was there actually a witch in the woods stealing babies and causing torment, or was this all part of a shared family madness and psychosis? What do you think, Tom?
Well, I think there's literally a witch, because when we're introduced to the witch, we see her from a third-person omniscient perspective. We're not seeing her from the perspective of a family member. So we see the witch with the baby. Then we see that the baby has been killed, and the witch is covering herself in blood and her broom handle in blood.
That's true, Tom. It would be hard to argue that was the baby's perspective.
So the movie, I think what makes the movie kind of powerful, it also makes it inconsistent, but it makes it powerful and creepy, is that in the first 15 minutes, not only do we have a witch who is killing babies, I mean, it's extremely dangerous, but her ability, or their ability, as we later find out, to manipulate reality is going to be beyond what we can understand. The evidence of that being how quickly the baby disappears. And so I think within those two scenes, her playing peekaboo with the baby and the baby disappears immediately, and the fact that we get a third-person perspective of what the witch does with the baby tells us that there's an actual witch there.
What about you, KJ? What's your take?
I had read online afterwards that was kind of, you're supposed to have one, you fall on one side or the other. But while I was watching it, I wasn't thinking about was there a witch or wasn't there a witch, or was this, from this perspective, it really felt more like a screensaver. Like I was just sitting with the movie, like I had mentioned last week, and having it wash over me. So I think if we wanted to get technical, I guess I agree with Tom, because like the camera thinks there's a witch, so to say. There wasn't a POV there. And then I was gonna say the last scene also heavily suggests that there was and are witches, but that could have been from the Queen Gambit's perspective. So I don't know where I fall. How about you, Chris?
So I'm a huge fan of like scientific history. And I'm also a huge fan of American history and the idea of like what caused the Salem witch trials and all these other things. I'm not sure if either of you have heard of this, but there is documented scientific data that shows that a lot of these the hysteria that went along with the Salem witch trials was caused due to basically an alkaline poisoning from a fungus that invaded their crops. So based on historical journals and diaries read from people of the time and the limited collection of weather data and how long it rained and what temperatures it was, scientists have kind of concluded that this was the perfect storm of situations for this ergot fungus to grow in wheat. And people in a starving society would have eaten the bad grains and turned it into breads and would have gotten this kind of like hallucinogenic poisoning over the course of the winter months. And that would have caused them to see things and hear things and perhaps act weird. And with a limited knowledge of how that was going on and what was going on in their bodies, they would start to believe it was witchcraft. And they do a really good job in this movie of kind of pointing out throughout the film that, they walk upon this plain and it's nice, lush and green. And then throughout the film, they're shucking corn that's half rotted on the stalks. They're having a hard time. Now, I think shooting the witch for the POV or not for the POV through the camera is because if you title a movie The Witch and don't do that or don't show a witch, people are gonna have an issue with it. But at the same time, I kind of took out of it as like this is not a witch tormenting a family. This is a family that's stressed out. They're on the edge of nowhere. Nobody wants to be there other than the dad, because the dad is the only one that's got the problem with the town. And they're all hopped up on this like hallucinogenic alkaline that's in their food. And they're being told that things are happening. Like Tamison is told, "You're the witch," very early on by the twins. And she says, "No, I'm not. I'm not the witch. I'm not the witch." Like she's obviously not the witch, but then towards the end of the film, spoilers, she floats like she's a witch. Now, is that in her head? Is that something that she's imagining? Does she imagine those people dancing around the fire, or does she imagine Black Phillip talking to her? That's where I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to think that Black Phillip is a real talking goat. I guess that's my take in the film, but that's what I liked about it in my second viewing, because I had that idea when I originally saw it, and this second viewing through, I was able to kind of like pick out some more of the details about it. The only thing, and Tom, you're absolutely right, is where did the little baby go? And there's never a plausible explanation for where the baby went that wasn't just something else.
This ends up being what my problem is. This idea of the hysterical diagnosing or looking at the hysterical, right? Which is why I think they're so intent on, or the director is so intent on titling this a folktale. He titles it twice a folktale. In the beginning, he calls it the New England folktale, and in the end, there's a screen that says, "This is based upon folktales and fairy tales drawn from the period, actual documented journals and court trial evidence about it." And so there seems to be this idea of, first of all, it's not a folktale in any. There seems to be this idea of a folktale that is somehow supposed to tell us how people back then thought about the world in this sort of pseudo or extremely hysterical way that ends up culminating several decades later in the Salem witch trials. Again, the problem though I have with this is the director also seems pretty intent very early on in the movie telling us there's a witch. It's only later that we get the kind of rotted corn, and the only explanation we're given for many of the activities, the missing baby, even the dead children in the stable when the children are killed, is that the witch killed them. That the thing we saw kill them actually killed them. There's really no no alternative. And I thought that was what made the movie effective, actually, is the fact that right from the beginning, it's out there and it's coming for them, for whatever reason. The fact that they call it a folk tale makes it confusing because it's not a folk tale. A folk tale is sort of
Usually there's a lesson in a folktale, right? Right.
not necessarily lesson. That would be more of a parable, and a folktale can be a parable, but they're not necessarily one and the same. I thought it probably worked better as a parable, but a folktale is a sort of repeatable structure that involves certain common elements. So you could think of like the hero's journey or something like that is an element of a folktale that's repeated. There's no real character archetypes here. There's no princess. There's no hero. There's no pusher who pushes the hero out into the world. Um, what we actually have here are, I think, fairly well-rounded characters. I think the father is, I thought was going to be like a stand-in for patriarchy or the problems of religion. I thought he was a pretty interesting and pretty well-rounded character, especially since he seems to really care for his family. He listens to them. He's the person who listens to his daughter Thomasina when she says, "I'm not a witch," right? He does.
He
Doesn't he?
listens, but then flips the script and is like, no, you are a witch. And then she's like, oh crap, let me blame somebody else.
Yeah. Does he eventually come down that she's a witch? I thought he went, no, she's not.
He does. So like after the
Am I
Caleb
wrong?
thing, when Caleb dies in the attic and the two kids can't say the prayer, which apparently is in documentation that is something that witches, quote
Mhm.
unquote, weren't able to do. They weren't able to say a prayer. Like, so when the two kids start convulsing and can't say their prayer, they're also showing witchiness themselves. Then like he takes Thomason outside and is basically like saying, tell me you're not a witch because you saw what just happened up there. Only a witch would do that kind of thing. So he does kind of accuse her of being
Mhm.
a witch. But before that, he does defend her. So he does
Mhm.
have this moment of kind of like flipping on her a little bit.
Well, because
Uh,
he knows he took the chalice, and there was a few other things that he
Yeah.
did that.
There's a few things he did that were crappy. I think taking the chalice, but then he later says, "I'm sorry, that was," which I found more well-rounded. Like he is a guy who succumbs to temptation, but he's also trying to make right. He's not, you know what I mean? Like I thought he was going to be just the villain, and he turns out he was a weak man. That's what I think is his problem. He's a weak man. He's not a bad man.
he's
And
kind
with
of I guess you could call him the villain in this because it's his like hubris and desire to not back down from the other townsfolk that caused them to be in this
Mhm.
situation, right? Like it's his impetus. Like you in that very first in the very first scene of the movie, there's a trial. This is before Samuel's even born, by the way. Samuel's not on the trip out there.
Mhm.
There's a trial where there's basically saying, are you sure you don't want to, like the people of the town are not begging him to, but they're saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because we will banish you if we have to, but we don't really want to. Like, and it's his pride and hubris that kind of caused them to be banished to where they are.
Mhm. I agree. I think he's at fault for a lot of things. And well, I won't agree that he's a villain. I think he's at fault for things. And I think that we are supposed to not have a lot of respect for him for going out into the woods, especially since we don't know what it was that gets him banished. It seems to be a not like a sin or something like that, but a religious disagreement, a sort of dogmatic disagreement that results in this banishment.
Yeah, it seems like he's almost too religious for the Puritans, which, if you can believe that statement, is it seems what that's what it might actually be.
Yeah, it's a kind of Roger Williams thing. But yeah, but I still I don't know he's the villain because I think we have a villain. It's the baby killing witch. You know, the woman who murdered the baby and covered her naked body in the baby's blood. You know, that seems to be like the distinct villain, and he's just no match for it. And I think when Thomasina, right? Um,
I think it's Thomason.
Thomason, excuse me. When Thomason is like, you're just she calls him out for this. She says, you know, a lot of these problems are your kind of weaknesses. And maybe part of that is hubris, that his religious dogma is correct and the townsfolk aren't. But even there, once things get bad, he's like, we're going back to the town. I'm sorry about this. So I ended up finding him to be a far more kind of balanced and interesting character because of his weaknesses and because of he's wrestling with those weaknesses. He doesn't seem to purely have succumbed to them. He makes a problem, he tries to correct it. So I found him a lot more interesting, and I couldn't identify then the parable if there is one. It seems as if, with the exception of the murder of Samuel, what ends up happening to the family corresponds to a sin. They lie about the apples. The kid dies with an apple in his mouth, right? The the chalice goes missing, and bad things happen about that. She lies about Black Phillip whispering to the kids, and then Black Phillip becomes the devil or a demon or something like that. So it seems to be that every kind of lie or mistruth or misdirection ends up becoming real. It becomes real after the sin or the lie has been stated, and that ends up being what harms them. Again, the exception is Samuel, unless Samuel or the death of Samuel has something to do with his pride and not willing to back down to the town. But I don't know. I found even the parable to be. I had to work to find the parable.
What do you think the purpose of the twins was? Because we see the twins very infrequently. When we do see them, they're kind of, they're talking about Black Phillip early, and then they disappear. Well, I guess we're meant to assume that they are deceased, but we never see them. We never see them die. This movie is not afraid of showing grisliness in any form, like you've mentioned multiple times this podcast about the witch and the baby's blood and stuff like that. Like, they're not afraid to show that. So where did they go? Like, why not show that? Because it's a very tight 100. That's what is it, an hour and 36 minutes? They weren't strapped for time. It wasn't that they had to cut it down. Like, where did those kids go? Why were they there? Why are they so attached to Black Phillip? What are your take on them?
They were almost like a Greek chorus, weren't they? Kind of just chanting whatever was going on. The goat's out, the goat's out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Greek chorus sort of tells the audience. The Greek chorus in Greek plays is a stand-in for the crowd, for the audience. So they tell the audience what's going on, as you're saying, but they're also sort of the ethos of the city. I don't think the kids are exactly that, right?
That's true. It's maybe just the chorus, not the Greek
maybe
chorus.
just the chirping part. I guess. I mean, the thing with Black Phillip is they just seem like children playing with their goat. And then when the main character, Thomason, makes the accusation that they're actually whispering to the devil, it seems the accusation manifests in the truth of them talking to the devil. And suddenly they become like possessed spirits. It's almost as if her sin, in sinning, in lying, her punishment is that the sin becomes real, the lie becomes real. And that's what I got out of them, other than they're kind of weird and kind of creepy, and goats are super creepy because of the way their pupils are shaped. Yeah, so that's what I got out of the twins. Now, why we don't see their bodies, I think that is a delicacy on the part of the director that I appreciated. We don't see the baby's body either. We see the blood, and there's a lot of it. I don't think we see the grisliness, right? Or am I wrong?
No, yeah, you're right. We don't ever see, thankfully, we don't ever see an actual baby's body. But at the same time, it's like they weren't beating around the bush telling you what was in that concoction that she was creating. So it was just, I didn't know if they were supposed to be more or what it was, and I just wanted to get your take on it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think they're, and this is why I kind of have a larger problem with this idea of titling it a folktale. I don't think they're narrative elements. I don't think they're archetypal character elements. I think they're just a family. I think they're people, and they don't embody these kind of archetypes at all. And I don't think the narrative is structured in any way that is recognizable as a folktale or a fairy tale. I think possibly the idea of it being a parable of you lie and the lie manifests, but it seems like what the director is leaning towards is more of a hysteria thing, a Salem's witch trial, as you were saying, Chris. Like, this is once you get worried or hysterical about something, you turn on the people you love. The problem I have with that is, again, and I've said this a few times, I think it's very clear that the threat is real. And so when they're like, oh no, the goat is whispering to the kids. I tend to believe that the goat is whispering to the kids and it's the devil because, we see the goat as the devil and it's killed it kills the father, it kills the children. And so my problem with it ends up being, yes, this family kind of turns on each other, not terribly, but a little bit, especially the mother, really. But the thing they're scared of is real. There is something that's malicious and out to hurt them directly. And so I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to understand this as a critique or in an examination of hysteria when, when the source of your paranoia turns out to be legitimate.
Maybe it's just meant to be live with this family for a while and see what happens to them.
Salem witch trials, slice of life.
Yeah.
Hey,
I
have
don't
you
know,
guys
what
ever
Go
seen the
for it.
movie Haxan from 1922? It's
Nope, can't say that I have.
so it's a silent film, but it's presented as a documentary about witches. So it starts in the medieval times and kind of moves through time. And I thought it was really good. It had a very similar vibe to this movie, where because it's presented as a documentary and because it's such an old movie, you start wondering like maybe they did know things back in the 1920s because they were closer to it than we know now. And so if you guys ever if you liked The Witch, I'd highly recommend checking out Haxan from 19.
Haxan? Like, how's that spelled?
I think it's Haxan. Might be some umlauts in there.
Oh, I see. There is an umlaut over the A.
So Chris, what did your wife think of the film?
Oh man, she hated it. It's she didn't dig it. I think I completely understand her point of view of it because it's definitely not a film for everybody. Just like I think like silent films not for everybody, or foreign films are not for everybody. And by the way, Marvel films are not for everybody. Star Wars is not for everybody. So like there are definite things, like there are avenues that people are in their wheelhouse. Some people's avenues are maybe a little bit wider. And this was just not her type of film. Like she's not a super heavy drama fan. So yeah, she wasn't a fan. But it being that we're in the Halloween, just past the Halloween season, where she was into watching a spooky movie, and it was spooky. I what do you think about the sounding? Like, what do you think about the music and the lack of music for a lot of it? Had that kind of added to the spookiness for me? Did you guys have the same idea, the same thought?
It's my problem with the music was it was trying to tell me how to feel and not subtly and not behind anything. There was a lot of silent, but then at least 3 times the music's building up, building up, building up when somebody's either walking through the field or headed to the barn. The music I thought was distracting, even in its silence. I'm like, I know you're trying to get me to feel a certain way, so it didn't quite click with me.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, it's interesting. The music was done by Mark Corvin, who went with a kind of minimalist dissonance. If you've ever heard of the music of John Cage, it sounds very familiar to that. But he used
The Mortal Kombat guy.
no John. That's
Johnny
Johnny.
Cage.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right, that is a Mortal Kombat guy. No, I'm thinking of the composer from the night. Did I get his name wrong? I'm pretty sure I know who John Cage is.
I mean, we all do. Because
Oh,
we
He's
yeah.
got a
played Mortal
mean
Kombat.
uppercut.
Yeah, John Cage. Yeah. Anyway, so if you know the music of Street Fighter competitor Johnny Cage, it'll be very.
If you know the
Johnny
music of
Cage.
Street Fighter Baraka,
This has gone off.
Tell us about Johnny Cage. I'm sorry, Tom.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, the music of Mortal Kombat competitor Johnny Cage. Yeah, but he apparently used like nickel harps, water phones, which are. I used to date somebody who played the nickel harp. Actually, it's like it's an interesting instrument. It's an untraditional instrument to get these kind of sounds. But I agree with you, KJ. Like despite the lack of conventional musical structure, it was very much like feel this, feel that. It was very directed. Yeah, and the I guess the minimalism was nice, I suppose.
I actually, the first time I watched this, my memory of it was that there was no music at all.
Oh, wow.
Well, I was
Yeah.
actually a little put
Oh.
off by the fact that the second time through I watched it and there was music in different parts. So I think I liked my memory better, that it was just kind of like a blank slate, no music whatsoever, no score whatsoever. But I don't know. I liked when it was quiet. So I didn't have the same dislike that KJ maybe you had, but at the same time I liked it better when it was quiet and the music wasn't there, because it felt more important, I guess. That makes sense. And I wasn't being told what to think, which now that you bring that up is 100% true.
Well, audience, I'd like to once again congratulate somebody. But was he ever on the show, or did we all make that up in our heads? Congratulations, Nick, for once again winning this episode. Well done.
I did have some moldy bread before the taping. Maybe he's not here.
Maybe he is here. That's
He's
how
not
he's
here.
winning. Oh.
He's not here.
Oh, so it is literal. Okay.
It's literal. This is a literal show. He's not here.
This is literally happening.
There's so many third-person perspectives proving that he's not there.
Audience, if you want to see the Zoom, we're not sharing it, so you'll always wonder.
You'll never know. Just like Chris. Never know.
Always in the dark.
Always in the dark. We don't know if it's literal or not.
You can rate and review this show anywhere podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on Twitter at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Talking Pictures Trivia wherever fine podcasts are found.
Ding, 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 ding.
Wow, Talking Studios. You know, it would have been really good if the kid was like, how about them apples?
Oh, we got props now. Nice.
I just like the idea about them apples. I didn't think of that at all. That would be an excellent addition.
Because yeah, that's his whole thing. I saw an apple tree. No, you didn't. How about that?